Yeah, we're live. I'm here, West Tech Performance, and today's a good day. I'm going to take you guys and walk you over and show you what I was doing on the Barra. I was filming a video today on disassembly of the Barra, but more importantly for me is the reason that I wanted to disassemble it, and that's what we're going to be talking about tonight, is so I could take the cylinder head off and get it up on the flow bench. And you guys can get a quick peek over there. Don't get too excited. Yeah. It's all the way over there. It's all kind of fuzzy right now. But we're going to do some flow testing on the Barra cylinder head. So what do you guys think? When you guys come in and you guys join the chat, let me know what you guys think that thing is going to flow. Now you'll like the way I have it set up. Unfortunately, naturally, because this is the first Barra I've ever taken apart, I don't have a setup for the head to when you flow test something, we have a setup with the dial indicator and adjuster so that we can put the valve, so we can open the valve to basically whatever we want, anywhere from 50 thousandths all the way up to some of them might run 800-900 thousandths. Even on some of the big blocks, they might go to 1-inch lift. We normally don't go there on LS motors. It might be more like 600 or so, or 650. For most, for most of the cams that you run, most of the hydraulic roller stuff on an LS motor is going to be 650 or so. And you always like to go maybe a little bit more than kind of whatever camshaft you're running. A lot of the heads on the LS in particular, and on other heads like Vortex, small block Chevy heads, what they'll do is they'll keep, as you keep opening the valve bar, the flow will keep increasing. But at some point, like on the Vortex and also on Cathedral Port LSs, you'll get to a point where there's no more flow left. I mean, it just kind of, like on some of them, it will just level out, and on some, it will actually start going down as you lift the valve even farther, which is interesting. And then this begs the question for everybody when we show them the airflow. Hey, look, it was good up to 600, and then kind of leveled off, and then actually was down at 650 or 700. And then the question is, well, should I not run a 700 lift cam in there? And actually, it still can make power, because what you're doing is you've added another lift value there. And so the average airflow could increase. Sometimes it makes power, sometimes it doesn't. But just because the flow went down, that's not an indication that maybe you shouldn't have that kind of lift cam, especially if you're trying to maximize it, if you're trying to make as much power as possible. If you're not, and which is mostly the case, which is 90% of us out there, we're never taking advantage of everything that the head has to offer anyways. If we have a LS application, it's got a ported head on it and flows 325 CFM, chances are we're not making 2 horsepower per CFM out of our combination, or 2.2 or 2.3 or 2.5 that some guys make. And you can get some really big numbers there. So unless you have the combination that's really going to take advantage of that, worrying about those other things is kind of at the the last 4 or 5% of what you're talking about. But tonight it's all about the Barra. As I said, I have the head up right now. We're going to take a walk over in just a second. We'll take a walk over and I'll show you there's 2 things that concerned me about this particular motor that I took apart. Now there were 2 of them supplied to me, and I kind of wanted to keep one together and just run it bone stock, just the way that it came, as a used motor. And we kind of on all of these, just like when I go get a motor from the wrecking yard, you kind of have your fingers crossed. I mean, you try to do a little testing beforehand, but when I did a leak down test on this particular Barra, I noticed that on one of the cylinders on the exhaust side particularly, that they didn't seem to be sealing. So when I'm done airflow testing, I'm going to take a look at the valves. I'm going to take a look at the sealing surface and see if there's something going on there. Maybe there's something in between the valve and the seat. Maybe they need to have a valve job. Whatever it is, we'll take care of it, because I would kind of like the thing to be in, good representative shape, just like we did with the Atlas, the 4200 Ameribarra motors. We wanted to make sure that they were representative. And the reason for that is, this is for posterity. This is forever. Everybody's going to be referring to these, not particularly this one, but everyone will use this information and refer to it and go, hey, look, a stock one makes this amount of power. So if we want to show them actually what a stock one makes, we need to give them a good example of a stock one. If we give them one that only has 50% of one of the cylinders, that's not really representative of what's going on. So we want to do what we can, even though we're trying to do it on the cheap and get it from a wrecking yard and do it that way. in the case of an LS or the 4200, or all the way from Australia in the case of the Barra. We want to make sure that it puts its best foot forward. So if it has a hole that's down 5 or 10 or 20 or 30%, we want to make sure that we fix that. And then when we run it, it does what it's supposed to do. And then we can say, okay, look, if you have a good Barra, this is what it does. If it's not good, it's going to make less than that, and that's pretty easy to explain. And then the other thing that happens is, because with the 4200 or this 4-liter Barra, we're going to be adding boost to it, and probably in the case of the Barra, maybe not cams, although maybe later on. But we definitely are going to be adding boost to it. We're going to be adding valve springs, and we're going to be upgrading the oil pump and doing and headsets and stuff, and doing the things that we do. But before we do that, we want to make sure that we have a good combination. Because what happens is, if you have a cylinder that's down, oh, that's really, really loud. If you have a cylinder that's really, really down from the others and you start adding boost to it, there's a really good chance that that cylinder is going to get worse and worse and end your dyno day, which is, that's never fun. So what we'll do is make sure that everything's running right with the Barra that we test, and that when we put it up there, just like we did with the 05 and the 06, the 06 obviously was not in good shape at all and is not in any position to test. So if we would try to run it, it would add at least 2 holes down, and I think more like 3. And the 05, I'm still not sure that the 05 was 100%. That's why now that we've taken it apart, we put ring gap in it, we're putting head studs in it, and then we'll put it back together in total stock form, but with the valve jobs done on it, and so they've been touched up, so that will help it. And we will put it back and we run it, we'll go, okay, look, if you have an 05 and it's running good, like all the ones that Calvin seems to get, and it's running good, this is kind of what it should make. Here's the NA deal, and then we can do a comparison between the NA early 4200 and this early 4-liter Barra, and then the later one, and then hopefully, maybe, fingers crossed, a turbo version of the Barra as well. Because what I want to do is run a turbo version of the Barra, which nobody does, naturally aspirated, because we want to know where we're starting from. Yes, it's good that you have a turbo Barra or a turbo anything, and you run it with the turbo. Okay, but is that good? If it's making 400 horsepower, is that good? Well, if it's at 15 pounds of boost, and it's okay if the NA motor was only making 200 and you're now making 400. But if you're making 400 and the thing made 300 NA and you're doing it at 14 pounds, then that's not good. And the only way that you know that is if you start out and run the thing NA. And I haven't ever seen anybody on the Barra side do the turbo stuff, because it's a turbo one and it already comes with a turbo. So everybody just runs it under boost. So let's take a walk over. We got some people here now. Let's take a walk over and I'll show you what the Barra looks like, the one that we've disassembled, and you guys can kind of judge for yourself. What's up, everybody? And then we'll come back over, and I can hook everything up on the flow bench, and you guys will like what I've done. I think I went off on a tangent here. I started off telling you that I didn't make a plate to bolt down to with adjusters so that I can adjust the valves in different positions. But you'll see how I solve that problem when we go over there, which will be fun. So I'm going to disconnect here from my umbilical. We're going to take a little stroll, not down memory lane, but over here. Whoa, make sure you don't trip on my cords. That's not going to be good. Looks like they turned the light off on me. Figures. That's the kind of respect I get. It's going to get dark. It's getting dark in here. So what I will do is I will go turn the light on. Fancy truck over there. Yeah, what's up? What's up? And we have lightage. Whoa. Doing some truck action. That's Ish's truck. Nice. Okay, so here is basically the mess that I made. Taking apart my very first Barra. Good stuff. Cams are in good shape. The lash adjusters seem to be good. The rockers seem to be good. Here is the motor. You can see it's burning a little bit of oil. what I'll do is just detach this so you guys can see a little better. So I'm doing a whole video on the disassembly procedure. Don't want to get snagged there. But you can see what I did was labeled everything. Since it's my first time, I don't know where everything goes. Make sure that we do that correctly. Some spare parts down here. Got the big stuff, took the intake off all as one assembly. That was kind of cool. It was nice that that came off and I didn't disassemble all of the plugs and injectors and all that stuff. Saved some time. But when I was been doing this all day and I was trying to rush and get it done for you guys so that you guys could see what's going on. And so I had to kind of quickly rig the head up on the airflow bench to make sure that it worked, just so we could, you know, got to make some noise. At least we would get some numbers. So what do you guys think about the, I can read some comments now. What do you guys think about the condition of the short block? You think it'll work? I haven't done anything on the 360 item yet. Just here to click the like button. Everybody click the like button. Come on, get those like buttons going. Michigan's here. Mike wants to know if the Barry has a 300 Ford. We're not going to put new rings in it. We're going to put the old rings in it, but they'll have more gap when we put them in. It'll be interesting to see. This thing has to have a lot of miles on it. So it'll be interesting to see when I take the first piston out what the stock ring gap is now on what I assume is a high mileage motor. So it will be kind of interesting to see. A hot mess. Richard, is this the head that George did? George didn't do a head for me. That's a myth. George did a head for Calvin. The Fastest Problems guy, we're not sending a head for me. We talked about that a little bit, but I don't think that will happen. They didn't want to Calvin. But let's go take a look at the flow bench now. So see, and I'll kind of show you what's going on here. I'll take you guys for a little ride here. I've got my extension on the camera. So here we go. So because I don't have an assembly to basically push the valves down and locate them at the proper height, what I did was, see if you guys can get in here and see. You can see here. So that is an AN fitting, one portion of it. And I've got two of those, one for each, in this case, of the intake valves, so that they will hold the valve open the same amount. And again, I've measured that so that, oh, I don't want to lose my, oh, I lost the keeper. Man, I'm going to have to fix that now. You guys, come on. You're killing me. Trying to show off. And see, the other thing I did is that this is all part of it. See these? These were going to be inserts. These are all about 90 thousandths. So what I was going to do is slide these in so that we could change the lift by 90 thousandths for each one of these shims. And so I make one for each one of them. Unfortunately, these first ones that I made are not quite big enough to fit. They fit the valve stem, but they don't fit either the retainer, because it's obviously a lot thicker, or the valve guide, which is also a lot thicker. So this is this is the first attempt. I'm gonna have to do version 2.0 obviously and make that work, but I will. And what I'm doing is I'm doing a whole video on the airflow testing. So I promised you guys we could make some noise tonight, and we definitely will. And I'll be able to run it at one of the valve lifts, which right now, with that those aluminum pieces that I put in there for those AN fittings, that's right at 450 thousandths, which is kind of a good spot for this Barra head, because that's going to kind of be where most cams are. Now I'm going to go as much as we can, and it looks like with the available retainer to seal clearance that we'd have almost 500. We might have a touch over 500. So I'll go all the way to that, and then we'll try to come all the way back in 90 or 100,000 steps. And so I'll be able to do all that, but I wasn't able to get all of that done before I had to get on and do a live feed with you guys. But that's all awesome. So now what I'm going to do is find my keeper and put that back together, and then we can, you know, make some noise. Okay, lucky for me, I brought lots of these long needle nose pliers, which are always necessary. And I even brought the curvy ones in case I have to grab stuff, which that works out really good. There we go. And now we're sitting on my straight set, which looks like what I'm going to have to do. Got my flashlight. Whoa. Okay, it looks like I'm gonna have to grab a magnet and see if I can fish that thing out. I'll be right back. Da-da-da. Winning. Yeah, look at that. Okay, now let's see if I can really win. Yes. Nailed it. Okay, are you guys ready? This is going to be loud. So what I'm going to do is put you guys over here. So you can see. You guys ready? Everybody excited? Okay, flow range 4, above 150 CFM. We are at 28 inches. For intake, we have almost no leakage, which is very good. And our valves are all the way open at 450 lifts. So, okay, so what do you guys think? How much is it going to flow? Give me some numbers. Come on, guys. What do you guys think it's going to flow? How much? How much is it going to flow at 450 lift on this stock BA Barra cylinder head? Give me some numbers. Give me some numbers. Flow test. Here we go. Make sure you comment. Yeah, now I want everybody to tell me that I 320 CFM. I like those. I would really like those numbers. Those numbers are awesome. 252. It was too small to read. You guys weren't close enough. How about if I do it again? I'll bring the camera up there. That will be easier because I have an extension. You ready? Here we go. See? Can you see now? Can you see now? Yeah, you better be able to see now. Here we go. Whoa. Okay, contact. You guys got sucked in. Could you feel it? You guys went for a ride. You guys got sucked into the vortex. You guys are almost going for a ride on a Barra cylinder head. Yeah, if we take the spark plug out, it will gain a lot. We've done that before. Yeah, it sounds pretty mad. Tried to do everything that I could to get it, get the entry nice and radius and stuff, and seems pretty good. I'm curious now to see if it's going to flow even better. We'll go to 500 lift to see if that will be an increase, which I'll be able to do tonight. I'll be able to find out, which will be cool, to see if we get any gain from going up to a higher lift. And, you know, then people can argue about going to a 500 lift cam and all that. The thing is, on a 4-valve head, you can make lots of power and get a lot going with even just 450 lift. But and with 250 CFM, you know, it'll support a lot of power. And especially if you're adding boost to that, which is why a lot of guys, and I'm surprised that a lot of guys, more guys aren't doing camshafts with these, because I would think that, you know, with camshaft, and not so much lift, but more duration. You know, if you take a look at an LS, even if you don't go up and lift a lot, if you stay with like 550 lift of a stock cam, of a stock LS3 cam or something, stay with a 550 lift, but go out from 205 or 210 degrees of duration out to 220 or 225 or 230 degrees of duration, you're going to pick up quite a bit of power. And I think that the same thing will happen with the Barra or any motor. The nice thing about the 4-valve stuff is you don't typically need nearly as much camshaft as you do on the 2-valve stuff, but still, almost always, you know, if you look at a Honda or Toyota or any of these other ones that have more cam timing in them, this was at 450 lift. You guys couldn't tell when you went down into the port? You could just see that? Same as my ported 3800 head at 600. That's pretty good that's a lot for a ported 3800 head. Yeah, the head's going to Calvin, it's not going to me. Oh, the cams are expensive. Are the Kelford cams are expensive? I think that the guys at Schneider want to do some regrinds on it, so that will be good. The problem is, like with all of the Barra stuff, is that it's mostly here in the United States, is that the parts availability, I can't go down to Napa and get parts for this, although I did go down to Napa today and got my first part for the Barra, but it was a socket. It was I think it's an E18, the one for the it's a star socket for the head bolts. And I have to say, there's something that I really like about the Barra, and that's the fact that all the head bolts came off without any problem at all, and I didn't break any of them. Like I broke all of them on the 4200. And I was told by Derek, that the machine shop that has the motor, that he also broke 2 of the main bolts as well. So apparently that's problematic. What's the flow range for Cal on the bench? About 300. Mine calibrated at 301 and range 4. Just curious. I have a Superflow 600 wheel, but I still use manometers. Okay. A stock 06 4200 flows 275 at the same lift. I'll see, and we'll be able to get a direct back-to-back test on this bench, testing in this manner. I'm going to wiggle this thing around. I want to make sure that there's no way for me to, I don't have this thing dialed or located, so I'm just kind of eyeballing it, making sure that it's centered and stuff. So what I'm going to do is move this thing around and kind of see what's going on. I want to make sure that I have this thing right, and that I'm actually getting a reading right now. Also, I don't know if you guys noticed, it's flowing on the bore fixture that we're flowing on is 3.77, so it's something that we had for something else, not particularly for the Barra or for the 4200. We have lots of other sizes. When I say we, I mean Westech has lots of other sizes. Jesse, thank you. Happy to see you giving the Barra some R&D, going to the nitty gritty, like flow testing the heads and playing around with ring gaps. Most guys only go bigger cams after doing bigger turbos. Well, and that's the thing. It's easy to just get more boost, and you put more turbo in, and you get more boost. And the thing that's interesting is that with the Barra and the long runner manifold, if you put a turbo on it, you're going to make a lot of average power. It's going to be impressive. It's going to be like running, for the US guys, it's the equivalent of running a truck manifold on a 5.3 LS. So, you want long runners, and it's going to make good power in that range. And it's the same thing with the long runner stuff in the Barra. And I'm really excited about running the dual runner manifold on the Barra, because I think that that's going to be cool. Also, they're sending another lid for it, so we can do the short runner version with just a big plenum. So that will also be awesome. I really like doing induction systems, and again, I like doing them NA, and I like doing them under boost. So I wish that I wanted to try I wanted to get the slots and make them. As a matter of fact, you know what? Let's do something. Let's take a walk over here. You guys can take a walk with me. We can maybe try to get some stuff done. You guys can see some spark and stuff, because that's always better. It's always better than just stand there listening to me talk. I mean, who wants to do that? I don't even want to do that. So I got to get some new washers. They got to be bigger. So we have that. So I'm trying not to drop all of them. So right now, for this live feed, I'm going to try to cut 2 of them. So I'm going to need my vice grips. Grippy grip. So we'll see if we can't use these to change the lift. My Miami vice grips. From now on, all of my vice grips will be named Miami. Because there should be no other name for vice grips other than Miami. By the way, important safety tip: when you cut these and grind them, they get really, really hot. So don't try to grab them. Okay, let's see. Oh, good. My vice grips are already here. So you guys get to watch as we make some sparks. So what we're doing here, look at this. So we got this. What we're going to do, cut the slots in it, grind a little bit so it's flat again, flat-ish. We'll see what happens. And one of my favorite tools, the chop saw. Thank you, guys. Okay, as I said, they're very hot. So now let's head back, see if our little plan worked. I hope they don't light the rag on fire. That would be bad. Wah-wah. It's like high speed. And we're going, and we're going, and we're going. And we are here. You're back in your airflow spot. So we'll take these, cool them off, take all the heat out of them. So when I touch them, I don't burn myself. Nice and cool. Yeah, nice and cool. Okay, now we're going to see if I can put them in and change the lift value. So we can measure these with my handy dandy. Here they are. You guys were sitting on them. So put this up a little bit. Okay, so nice. So one of them's 110 thousandths, the other one's 108 thousandths. That's actually fairly close for a washer that they just stamp out. So let's see if we can get these in here now. If we can do it one at a time. Ooh, we had success with one of them. One of them is in. Okay, come on, don't fail me. And number 2 is in. Okay, we're gonna run it again. Okay, what are the new guesses? Now it has less lift by about 100,000. So it's got about 350 thousandths lift now. So give me the guesses again. What are you guys guessing? What's gonna flow at 350 now? It was 252 at 450 lift, and now we're at 350 lift. So how much is it gonna flow? Come on, come on, come on, get those guesses in there. Come on, and while you're getting the guesses in there, get the like button in there. You guys know where it is. Come on, you're not new. This isn't your first rodeo. All right, here we go. And I'll get you guys, get your little, ready? Here we go. Get those guesses in. Come on, I want to see more. That's not very many guesses. Come on, get those things going. I'm here slaving away. It's about 300 degrees in here. Come on now. Here we go. 350 lift. What's it going to flow? What is it? What is it? Okay, here we go. That's actually pretty good. So we've taken 100 thousandths lift out of that thing, and we only went down to, what was that, 235 or so? That's pretty impressive. That didn't drop very much flow for a fairly sizable drop in lift. So if we could just keep it at that lift range, I mean, keep it at that flow range, all the 50 thousandths, we'd be looking good, right? We will, Sean, we will flow it at 600, but just, well, we can't flow it at 600 because there isn't that available. That thing won't go to 600 valve lift. The retainer will hit the guide before we get to 600. We know that we can get to 500 and maybe a little more than 500, but after that, the retainer hits the guide. Why did it flow less? Because we went from 450 lift down to 350 lift. The flow rate's going to go down. Always does that. Sandy Valley's in the house. Yeah, it's actually not bad. And that's the nice thing about 4-valve stuff is usually have a lot of a ton of mid-lift flow, and it helps. That's part of why they make so much power. They have a lot of average flow, and that's why they make so much power, even though you don't have really high lift stuff, because they've got a lot of average flow. That works out really good. That's why 4-valve stuff works so well. And just ask the guys at Engine Masters that after they ran all of the 4-valve modular stuff, when they did that, they outlawed the motor, because it is kind of hard to beat those. Will you do a full video on flow testing the Barra? That's the video that I'm actually working on right now. I did part of the video is the disassembly of the Barra, and then it's the flow testing of the Barra. So I'll have flow numbers at, hopefully, depending on how I can configure this, because my system obviously doesn't lend itself to getting 50 and 100 and 150. We'll have to see. I think I can do that, but I'm going to go from whatever the minimum I can get all the way up to whatever the maximum is. And I think that's a little over 500 thousandths, because I don't want to have to cut the guide down to do that. I've already taken the seal out, the factory seal out, to allow me to get as much as I can. So right now, we can go to about 500 lift. Can you put forward 2-valve springs? I don't know. I don't know if I have any 2-valve springs here. And the other thing I'm going to do in the video, in the full video, is I'm going to tell you guys what the spring rates are. So we'll be able to measure the factory Barra valve springs. I'll tell you where they set up at, and what the open pressure is, what the seat pressure is, which will probably tell us why everybody replaces them, because they're probably fairly weak. And especially after, I don't know how many miles this has on it, has a bunch. So that tends to have them go away a little bit, not a ton usually. So the gains from more lift have diminishing returns. It does on some heads. Sometimes heads keep flowing the more you open the valve. And even if I've seen some heads where they flow more with the valve in than if you pull the valve out and just flow without a valve entirely. Those are usually 2-valve race heads, but we've seen that happen. Sometimes heads will keep going, keep flowing up to 1-inch lift or something on some of these real race big block heads. And sometimes, like with an LS, they flow fairly well up to about 600, and then they might taper off or fall off after that. The Vortec head is a perfect example of that. They don't like high lift stuff. The flow will actually go down at higher lifts. This one seems to be doing okay. We've taken 2 data points so far, and we're trending up, which is good news. And I don't think that I would be surprised if we continued to get flow much past 550 lift on these, but who knows? I don't, this is my first Barra, so I don't know anything about it until I know something about it, until we start doing the data and generating it and finding out the testing. I'm also excited, obviously, about taking apart the rest of that and finding out what the ring gap is. And for you guys that are here that didn't see it last night, I don't have one of these for the Barra, but I do have one for the 4200. So we're gonna be testing that. But I think just running the Barra intake manifold, the dual runner one, and taking the top portion off and then putting a common plenum on will produce the same thing essentially as this does. We'll be able to tell the dual runner thing, and then we'll be able to tell the short runner thing by itself with a bigger plenum, and then that will facilitate us being able to run the boost into it, which will be nice. I like the idea of putting the big plenum with short runners on the Barra to do a big bang, if that's the direction that we decide to go with one of these motors, if I get the okay to do that. If that's the case, then we'll want to do that. And I probably will also play with cam timing. And what we'll do is configure the wastegate, and we'll adjust it relative to RPM so that we can have a big peak number and then not a big peak torque number, a big peak horsepower number at a higher RPM, however high they will rev with that short runner manifold. That's the thing. The short runner manifold will help it with RPM, But if you don't have a ton of head flow, and more importantly, if you don't have a ton of camshaft in it, then it's still going to make peak power at, you know, let's say 6,000 or so, something like that. But again, it's all new information for me. And I'm obviously, this is the first time I've ever flow tested one. It's the first time I've ever taken one apart. So I'm definitely not the expert on this, but that's why we're all here. We're all here to learn. So let's see what you guys are doing. I'm going to go ahead and shut the light off of the flow bench, and, you know, you guys talk amongst yourselves. I'll be right back. Light switch, light camera action. I'm back. I think this makes a nice backdrop. I like the blue, and I like the fancy intake manifold. We're gonna get a little bit more blue in here. How blue is your world? There we go. Okay, so let's get to some questions. If you got, what do you guys think about the flow testing? We're gonna move that over just a little bit. What do you think about the flow testing? What do you think about the so far the flow results? What do you guys think about the motor? Do you think it's in good enough shape? It has that kind of old car, I've been hot before smell, which I don't like when we take them apart, when we take apart a wrecking yard motor, because it tells me that I might not be happy. We'll have to see. You know, maybe that's different in Australia. I do like. I'm excited that I actually got to do testing on and even if it's the flow bench. I'm losing my camera signal here. The other thing I want to do that I didn't do, and I'm going to take the stock injectors out and flow them, just because we have Westech has the ASNU machine, the injector stuff, and so we'll flow them. I just want to see if they're gummed up. We had to take off the motor this motor had the aftermarket LPG injection on it, so we took that off. And we won't obviously be using that when we're running it on the dyno. I did manage to damage a couple of things when I took this thing apart. I see damage. The intake gasket I hurt when I was disassembling it, and two of the coil packs, the rubber portions, were just stuck in there and didn't want to come out, and I destroyed two of them taking it out. So I'm going to have to either take spares off of the other one or get new ones. The intake gasket, I don't think should be a big problem. That should be readily available, I would imagine. Exhaust gasket was fine. All the exhaust bolts came out nicely, so there was no issue with that. The manifold seems to be in good shape. The camshaft looks like it's in good shape. All the lifters came out nice. I did notice, as I said at the beginning of the video, that the flow rate or that there seemed to be leakage in one of the cylinders. So we're going to, when I get this thing off, it's not the one that I'm testing because I made sure that we moved it over one for the test. So we're going to take a look at that naturally in the video, and you'll see I gave this head the razor blade rebuild, the Super Richie one, and it works apparently as well on Australian motors as it does on US motors. So if I can just fix this one by, you know, putting the drill on it and putting some lapping compound on it and seat the valve and then it seals, that will be great. If not, we'll do a valve job. We'll do whatever we have to do. I won't know that till after we look at it. I'll take it apart and see, oh, this one's pitted, it's bad. Yeah, I want to make sure that, and usually we can see that with the naked eye, whether the valves have run out in them or they're bent. I don't think that that's the case. I didn't see any damage or any indication that there was piston to valve clearance, and the cams are fairly mild and stuff. The valve cover and front covers and all that stuff came off fairly nicely. Luckily, I was able to watch some videos on that before taking this apart to find out how that's done. It all worked good. So let's see what you guys got going on. Dingle ball hone, gap, scrub the rings with Scotch-Brite. I don't normally do, we can clean them, and we do usually clean them. I just wipe them off with a rag, and then we'll put ring gap in them and then put them back in. And we make sure that when we do ring gap that we dress, I normally just cut one side, not both. But I dress all four edges of that to make sure that it doesn't, because you don't want when you cut the ring, it usually leaves flash or an edge on one side, at least one side, sometimes on two. And what happens is if you put the ring back in like that, then the ring will hang up in the piston, and that's not good. You want the thing to be able to move freely. And so we make sure that the nice thing about that Total Seal piston ring tool that we have is that it has a wheel on it, so that what you do is just dress all the edges after you've cut them, and it turns out it's nice and smooth and everything, and the thing can go on without any problem. So it'll be interesting to take the bottom end apart and see. And again, I've watched videos on it, because when you've never done it before, the guys, this is what we go to YouTube for. When you've never seen it before, you go onto YouTube and watch the guys that have done it a whole bunch, and they give you little tips and tricks, and like the pulling the things off of the variable cam timing deals before you pull the valve cover off and stuff. All of that's very important, and it makes my life easier, because today trying to get that done so that I can get that done for you guys is, you know, there's a lot of stress going on there to try to make sure it all happens in a timely fashion. That's why I was doing the seals, and then when I did one set of seals, and I actually did 2 sets, so we could run 2 more valve lifts basically, but then to have them not fit, and that happened about like at 6:58, so 2 minutes before we were supposed to go on air. You know, that's all part of it. That happens. It happens to you guys. It happens to everybody that works on cars. Things don't always go right. I mean, I got today, when I was taking the motor apart, everything was going smoothly, and I actually thought that we had the star sockets to take the head bolts off, and it turns out that we didn't have those here. Nobody had them here at Westech. I didn't have any, and they didn't have any, and so I just had to run down to the store. And then when I ran down to the local Napa store, then I couldn't remember what the size was. So I bought 4 of them. and one of the ones in the middle was the right size. So it all worked out good. But just so you guys know, and I get these comments and emails that people will say, like when I did the video of me spilling the oil all over or spilling water on myself, they're like, dude, that's so cool that happens to you, which is not a very nice thing to say for you people. But they just said that it's cool that happens to everybody. A lot of times guys will do videos and they make it so that everything happens perfectly. But it's not like that. It's not like that for me. It's not like that for the guys here at Westech. Every test doesn't go flawlessly. Every disassembly or every assembly, there's always stuff that happens. You poke yourself in the eye or burn yourself or whatever it is. That's all part of it. And that happens to everybody. So I want you guys to know, maybe it happens to me more often than it should, but I'm sure it happens to you guys out there too. And this barrel was a perfect example of that. There were things that happened when I was filming the intake disassembly part of it. This will go nicely on the video, but what happened behind the scenes is that every time I tried to take the intake off, which is probably why I damaged the gasket, each time I would try to take the intake gasket off or take the intake off, disassemble it from the head, there would always be something else that was attached. And I went over the intake 3 times before starting the first filming to just actually do the shot where I'm taking the intake manifold off. I disconnected all the hoses, disconnected all the lines, disconnected all of the portions of the wiring harness, because I didn't want to keep that there. I mean, I didn't want to cut it. I wanted to keep that there. I wanted, if somebody's going to be using that, I wanted that to be available to them if it's all there. So I didn't want to just start cutting the way that we do when we're at the wrecking yard with an LS, because I don't care about the factory harness because we never use it. But I didn't want to cut this one, so I was careful to take everything apart, take all the braces off, and do all the stuff that you know is there. And then each time I would go to take it off, there would be another thing that's still connected. Another line, a knock sensor, something that's holding it on there. And then eventually I got all of those and it was able to take it off. So that's what happened. So let's get to your question, sir. Let's see, run it upside down. At least the head bolts didn't all break off. And I mentioned that was very important. They all came off really nice. And to me, they didn't seem like, when I was doing the 4200 and trying to take the head bolts loose, they seemed like they had 1,000,000 foot-pounds of torque. And on this, it seemed like it was with the way that it was supposed to be. And it came off nice, because I was a little worried with that star pattern, but that all worked out good. We'll put ARP head studs on it, so it will have a good feel to it once we're done. That's why you'll find wrenches in every corner of the shop. That's part of it too. That happens. Stuff doesn't go right, and sometimes we retaliate on the poor wrench. how it compares a 4-valve to a 2-valve head. They actually made this Barra in a 2-valve version before they went to the 4-valve. Sometimes after ball honing, the gaps open up 5 thousandths or so. So does the ball honing take off that much? And actually, between you and I, if it changed at 5 thousandths, I kind of wouldn't care. Yeah, broken bolts can be problematic. And after talking to a couple of people about the 4200, when we broke the head bolts, I was told that, hey, once they break, they've released. So when you take the head off, the portions that's left in the block, it's already come loose. So it will just spin out. That wasn't the case with any of them. None of them wanted to just spin out. Flow bench, the Barra head versus the Atlas head. I would love to, but I don't have an Atlas head here that's finished. Yeah, the 4200 head bolts are pretty notorious for that. I broke all of them, and like I said, when Derek was taking apart the bottom end of that 4200, a couple of the main bolts too. BK7E NGK plugs are pre-gapped to 0.8. That must be a metric reference. We like 19 thousandths, whatever that is. Is it 0.8 millimeters or something? David, no, this is a Barra head. This is not a 4200 yet. And the Faster Problems guys didn't do a head for me. So you're thinking that the Atlas head will make more than a Barra. The comparison I want to see actually is this head versus the 05 head. I'm kind of curious to see what's going to happen on the 05 head. The only thing that's getting done to the 4200 Atlas heads are they're just having the valve jobs done, and they had to have put seats in the 06 heads because some of them were bad. Will it be a fair comparison when you flow the 4200 head? Aren't you getting the 4200 head worked? The only thing we're doing to it is a valve job. That's it. It just will have a factory valve job on it. And it'll have new seats on the 06 head because the seats were damaged, which is fairly common. 0.8 is around 32 thousandths. That's, yeah, I won't run 32 on a turbo motor. We could do that on the NA motor. It would be fine. LS Fest East. I don't have plans to do that yet, but I may go back with Brian. We'll have to see. K24 versus Vera versus AFR LS headed comparison video. That actually might be interesting at 600 horsepower, let's say. Alex, I don't have a go-to spark plug for the stock 454 head. I may have found somebody to port the 4200 head. Okay, James, you have to ask. LY6, gap ring, stock rec port heads, BTR stage 2 turbo cam, L92, BSR 88 millimeter. I've never run a single 88, but we know what that motor will do. The motor should be like at 5. I don't know. I'm thinking 530 or 540. So you just multiply out from there. Yeah, I agree. I think that the 05 will be a better match for the Barra in terms of the head flow. I don't know what year this Barra is. I can look and see if they have it on there, but it's a BA. It's the early lowest power NA version. I'm going to flow test the intake and the exhaust on the Barra. What I have set up works on the exhaust side too. Right now, they're just sealed. Mike, this is not there's no head that George ported for me. Apparently, everyone's not listening to the same thing. Everybody, there's no ported head from anybody right now. No ported Barra head, no ported 4200 head, no ported head. The only heads I'm testing are stock ones. Adrian, can I post your heads? What you want to post the airflow numbers? We don't have all of them yet. The Barra is an iron block, yeah. I may grab an atlas and send it your way. If you're talking to me, you don't need to. I have a couple of them here. DFA Beagle, off topic, but curious if something like an XFI 236 cam is big enough for an 11-to-1 347. I'm thinking E85. Don't trust the 93 down here. You should be able to run that cam and that compression on a good aluminum head on a 347 small block Ford with 93. We run it on 91 here. We run it fairly cold, but you can run that on 93. Your head might not be portable, it looks polished. I did clean it up. I sprayed it with stuff. I know, where's Dulcich when you need him? He's done 6-cylinder heads. He's done lots of the slant 6 heads. Three types of Barra, NA, LPG, and green top, and the red top turbo. Early turbo Barra's head, Uyghur connecting rods. Do the Chrysler 2.2 that you see in the junkyard. I do need to. I haven't been back over today to get that because this took a lot longer than I thought. I'm hoping that it's not gone. I'm hoping that it's there because it's got the harness got burned, so a lot of guys like to avoid that. Yeah, Dulcich has ported a lot of heads. He does really good work. He was good friends with Vizard and Roger Helgeson and those guys, and so he's done a lot of stuff. He's ported a lot of factory heads and made a lot of power with stuff. Can you dyno test session NGK laser versus iridium versus race, etc.? You're not going to see anything. We've tested lots and lots of spark plugs and never seen any power. I'm ready to see the 3800 too. I might can help with some 2.2 turbo parts. That would be cool. What I need is a 2.2 turbo car. I need a GLH. Ideally one that's running and is all stock and is like $1,500 and it has nice paint and interior and low miles. Could you find me that? That would be cool. Barra versus Atlas versus 2J. If you ran them all naturally aspirated, the Atlas is going to win that. My brother's Barra Ford Falcon pumps out 712 horsepower with stock bottom end. Those kind of numbers are possible. Guys seem to do that more with the turbo version when they're starting out with the turbo version than with this NA version, though. excuse me, I know about the difference in the cylinder heads on the 2.2s. I've gone down that rabbit hole many, many times. I even go back and just reread all the stuff that I read before because I just think it's cool. I don't think that the 2JZ would win. I think if you did a stock bottom end test, I don't think the 2JZ wins. Yeah, and actually, I'm the same way. Burns was saying about the 2.2s and 2.5s. The one that I was looking at buying, and I still may, has a 2.5 in it, and I like that better because it's the big block of them. Now, the thing that I don't know is I don't know if it's a common block 2.5, which is ideal. That would be the one that I want. I still have my Fox body. It's an 88. Shelby Charger. I like the Chargers. I almost bought one back in the day, and then it didn't start when we tried to get it out of the showroom. So I took that as a sign and did not buy it. But I like those, but I want an Omni. I don't want a Charger. You have a trick to making head gaskets hold, is that you don't detonate the motor. Because I find that works really well. Brandon, on the four-corner idle stuff, what Steve likes to do is, on almost all the carburetors, the initial setting is a turn and a half out, and then because we can see the air fuel meter, we can see the results of what's happening, then we will adjust according to the air fuel meter at whatever he wants, and looking at the RPM of the motor. And then after he makes other changes to the other circuitry, he might go back and readjust that to change what he wants to do, for part throttle and load and stuff. A Fox body Falcon. That's what I'd like to do. I'd like to put a Barra in my Fox. You might be able to get them from the same people that this motor came from. And I'm going to give you their name because I forgot now. And I'm sorry. And I apologize, Mike. So everybody knows, because somebody already came by and picked up one of these. One of these were already sold. Okay, I'm scrolling. Okay, the shout out for, and I apologize. And I'm going to write this down on my computer so I know it, so I can refer to it all the time. Dominator Motorsports Australia. So if you want Barra stuff, Dominator Motorsports Australia. And also the guys at Max Speeding Rods. I haven't forgotten about you. We're definitely going to do some twin turbo stuff on the small turbos, the GT3076s and the GT3582s. Julia says there are kits available to do Fox body Barra conversions, guys. It's not as hard as you might think. I don't think it should be hard. A 2JZ is, they have history for making lots and lots of power, but basically what they're using is the block. And then they might be using the crank too, but they're not using the stock rods and pistons. The stock rods and pistons will go fairly far, but for one, the 2JZ is very small in displacement. And then nobody does stock bottom end stuff. I mean, we have lots of guys that have made 600-700 horsepower or whatever with lots and lots of boost. And that's the problem, is it takes a lot of boost on that motor to make power, because it doesn't make a lot of NA power because it's a liter less in displacement than this Barra is, or than the 4200 is. Right now, there's no drivetrain in the Fox body. The last thing that was in it was the factory 302. is a 302, a T5, and the original T5, which I drove forever and even raced it. And when I say race, I mean road race, not drag race. And then it had a 308. It came from the factory with a 308 gear, which I ordered with it because I was showroom stock racing, and that was the hot gear setup. We couldn't get the 327, only in the automatic. Twin turbo Atlas. The twin turbos will likely go on an LS. Yeah, I'm still working on what we're going to run the barrel with. I'm thinking it has to be Haltech, and so we'll try to figure that out. The barrel needs to go in a Datsun 260Z. I don't know if it's going to fit under the hood. I haven't done anything on the Nova. It's still up north. Richard, you broke a bunch of T5s. You and lots of other people broke them. You know, drag racing, speed shifting them is fairly abusive. Compound turbos on the Alice, it probably doesn't need that. The N54 BMW motor is another good one. That's another good 4-valve deal. Any thoughts on the Speed Engineering twin turbo kit? I don't really test kits because a lot of times they just don't fit. And the problem is if I test a kit, it's specific to some chassis, so it kind of limits what the information that we would be able to give. So that's why I haven't run a lot of them on the engine dyno. Julius, so they might. The guys at Haltech might help me out. Brian Tooley has a Haltech, so it might be that we could use his or run it back there at his place. You know, there are other options. James, you had a 4G63 and a 1988. Nice. A Ram 50? Am I reading that right? A factory ECM with SCT. And then we have to have a factory, would the harness that we have with this motor work with a factory ECU and SCT? First time, last name, you think Richard blocked you? I haven't even touched the keyboard. The crank sensor on the Barra is just a 36-1. It's very standard. So the thing that makes it difficult is the variable cam. Yes, runner length matters a lot with boost. It's the exact same as it is NA. Longer runners make more power down low. They do that NA and under boost. I don't think that the Barra is a forged crank. Yeah, the Atlas is. I think that the height of the Atlas is limiting, but it's kind of a cool motor though. We use PCM tech software for the factory ECU, and that's all great for guys that have factory ECUs and have them in cars and have the factory harness and all that stuff. But we don't have a lot of that stuff here. The runners on this intake do have, they don't have air horns. They don't have full radius air horns. All they have are flares. And when I did the testing did that on the flow bench, where we tested full radius air horns versus the way that we do this is I take it over to the muffler shop and just have them in their flaring machine, just flare them a little bit. They're not even rolled back. But when I did that and did the testing on the flow bench, that got me basically 90% there. So for the testing that I want to do for what I'm trying to figure out, it's really good. And again, what usually happens is that the runner flows more than the amount of air that I need for that cylinder for the amount of power that I'm making. So making that runner flow 10% more or whatever the number is by having a full radius air horn, a lot of times doesn't do anything because we already have more airflow than we need. Where will you put the injectors? Down near the valve or high up in the port? We can do both. My idea for this manifold was to build another rail and have the injectors up here right under the plenum so that we could get more length away from the valve. I don't know. I don't know what the height difference is. I can measure the Barra, but I don't have a 4200 here right now. But I think Calvin has that stuff. I think those dimensions might be up on the wiki. Velocity stacks work. That's why guys ran them back that day. Yeah, I don't think that was a discussion on whether they work or not. Yeah, the Atlas has the long stroke, and you know, there's argument as to whether or not if the displacement is the same and it has more bore or it has more stroke, what's actually going to happen. But you know, it's a truck motor, so they weren't trying to, you know, it wasn't a high revving thing. Does rifling intake runners help at all? I don't think that it would. TB48 next on the inline. What? I don't even know what that is. Yeah, the injector placement was done way back. You know, Formula One was already doing that a long time ago. Dimpling intake runner seems to help. We haven't run the ECU, so I don't know yet. HP tuners is $1,200. That seems like a lot. 4.8 liter straight six from Nissan. I can tell you that. Let me see here. Let me go back to the people from Dominator Motorsports Australia actually reached out and were talking to me about a 3-liter RB motor. But I had to pass because I got too much stuff going on. I don't even have this one running yet, and I don't have the 4200 running. And so, you know, an RB30 is awesome because I have an RB25 and I haven't even run that yet. And it's been sitting for, I don't know, it's been a couple of years now. So I need to run those before I can start thinking about anything else, which is when I went to the wrecking yard today. And if you guys haven't taken a look at the video that's up on my trip to the junkyard, you should. But when I went there specifically to get the things for the 3800 and for the 4200 so that I could run them. But every time I go there, something just jumps out at me and says, you have to buy me. Like I said, it's like going to Costco, or, you know, you can't walk out of there without spending a few $100s. Oh, we just got to go there to get this one thing. Oh, yeah, I definitely need this. I definitely need this. And everything that you need is like, you know, you're buying in bulk. It's buying large. What's the rough power limit for a stock bottom end 2-bolt main 1972 307? It will be force fed. I don't know what that power limit is. It depends an awful lot on the 2-bolt block doesn't worry me, and actually the rods don't worry me either. And the cast crank doesn't worry me, but the getting the thing so that it's tuned correctly worries me a little bit. Impulse buys at the yard. Yep, that's the problem. It's like standing in line. I remember the last time I was there, before this last time, the time before last, I was standing in line and I looked over and there's a guy who had a, you know, it could have been a 409. It was actually a 348, but he found that in that wrecking yard that day, and I missed it, and so I was a little mad at myself because that definitely would have jumped out and wanted me to take it home, and it had the 4-speed transmission too. Is the Bear and the Atlas the same motor? No. Yeah, and my problem is I don't when I go there, I don't see, like, I see lots of stuff laying on the ground that I want. I think, oh, that intake manifold, that's definitely useful. That piece of tubing, like in the video I did, I showed, you know, it's fairly common for a lot of the motors, V8s particularly, to have a Y-pipe exhaust, especially on trucks. When they have a Y-pipe exhaust, that's like most of a turbo kit. And so that's one of the things I pointed out. So those things are cool. But usually the things that I want are motors. When I walk around, that's my thing. I don't see, there are sometimes I see whole cars that I want, but our guys won't sell them. Like that Olds 442 is a perfect example. That's one time when I'm like, I really, really want this car, but they won't sell it. I did want the motor too, but I was worried because the car was in such good shape. It was almost certain that something was wrong with the motor or the trans, I guess. But that would have been a good one. And when I walked through there, I think I saw 6 or 7 3800s supercharged motors, and a couple of them were the Series 3 motors too. So those were even more desirable. Justin wants some testing on 94 to 98 octane. We don't really have that. We have 100 race gas here. Well, I guess I could mix it up. But if you take a look at the video where I did pump gas versus race gas, where I ran the timing at pump gas levels, you can see how much power you're having to give up. You're also going to give up a little bit more just because it's E85, because E85 all by itself will make power. But when you're tuning it, you just have to run so much less timing that you have to run, that you're going to make quite a bit less power. We've made a lot more than 450 from cast cranks. Will there eventually be a comparison between BMW, Nissan, and Toyota 6-cylinders? I would like to. Again, I'd like to do all of that, but that you just don't realize what that what that entails. The OS Geiken, I have seen they did it for more than the L20. They did it for the Z also. And it's like the most expensive 4-valve head you could ever possibly put on there. Oh, so the 98 rating is that they use a different rating system than we do, right? So their 98 is like our 93. So yeah, that's just pump gas. I've never put a 4G63 on the engine dyno. Yeah, I haven't seen any 455 Oldsmobiles in the wrecking yard. I try to use synthetic in my blinkers. Bob, I don't know how any octane booster could go from 93 to 110. I've seen lots of tests on octane booster, and usually when they change it, they don't even change it a full point. Like they don't change it from 93 to 94. They change it from 93 to 93.2 or 0.4. It's usually not a lot. Yeah, trying to run a whole bunch of different motors is just it's difficult to get. You've seen how long the 3800's taken, how long the 4200's taken, how long the Barra may eventually take to get everything to run it. Because I just don't have everything. I don't have all of the bell. Like when we come to Westech has all the small block Chevy bell housings I would need to run, all the big blocks, all the big block Fords, all the small block Fords, modular Fords, the things that we run a lot of. But the problem with running other guys' stuff, which all of those would obviously they would qualify as, but then you have to get everything, and so that's there's a lot of stuff that goes into putting one up on the dyno. I know it's a little off topic, but does a 4.8 get better mileage than a 5.3? Maybe. It depends on, you'd have to figure out, do you have more throttle angle in the 4.8, which can actually help. A lot of people don't realize more throttle angle reduces the pumping losses and you can actually get better mileage. The 4.8 motor by itself will get better mileage. But in a truck application, you might have to use a little bit more to run the weight and the aerodynamics. So I don't know that you'd see a big difference there. About a 1970s Martin turbo setup. Yeah, I've seen those. They're neat. The 307 with boost will work. It will work just fine. You're not going to try to make 1,000 horsepower out of it. But if it's a 300 horsepower motor and you make 600 out of it, that's going to be a lot more fun. It's a matter of fact, it's going to be more than twice as much fun. Well, Daniel, you should listen to David then if he says that he's developed some or created some that increase the octane dramatically. Then I would like to see that tested. I have tested propylene oxide because guys were using that in showroom stock way back, and when we tried it in one of the race cars that I had, and I didn't see a big change on the chassis dyno. We're planning to use the FG Barra intake manifold only if somebody sent me one. We're going to use the manifold that came with the motor. like to see somebody take the old 301 turbo and redo the turbo flow setup. It's just not a real powerful motor to begin with. As a matter of fact, that particular motor makes very little power NA. It's kind of relying on the boost to be reasonably powerful. At 60 miles an hour, my 4.8 express van gets 20 miles per gallon. That's good. And my truck will get 20 on the freeway at 65 miles an hour. And it's a 4-wheel drive, and it's a 5.3, and it's a tired 5.3. Oh, Joyce is saying there's an FG manifold on the way. Nice. See, Joyce is in the house. Have I really been on the air for an hour and 27 minutes? I talk way too much. Hydrazine, yeah, we're probably not going to test that. I would like to test the Pontiac 301 only because it's a Pontiac and it's an other guys. And the 301 of all the Pontiacs is like a real other guys kind of thing. I have that 347 that I want to run, but again, that's a perfect example of running other guys' stuff. It's a completely unique bell housing, and I have an automatic, and that won't work. And trying to find one, you know, if I had all the money in the world, I could just go search around, spend all my time on looking online and just buying stuff, but a lot of times that stuff is not possible. Yeah, the 301 Turbo Trans Am. They used that in the last, I think the last Smokey and the Bandit movie. No, hydrazine's very dangerous. Pontiac does have a really cool inline 6-cylinder and a 4-cylinder. Have you tested Weber carbs, side drafts, and downdrafts? I've tested lots of, I've run lots of side drafts because I had them on my Z. A 301 Turbo would be good. I'd like to have a 301 Turbo Trans Am. I'd like to have the whole car. Yeah, Mercruiser 470 engine. Those are good. No diesels, because we won't run diesels on the engine dyno. And I had one, but I don't have it anymore. Yeah, 455 turbo would have been really nice. All right, guys, I got to get going. Thank you all for showing up. I hope you like the. I wasn't done talking. I hope you guys like the airflow testing. I got to get back to that. We got to do more of that. I got to finish it. Come on, you guys, maybe go 30 minutes over, man. What's up? Thank you all for showing up. I will see you tomorrow.